You're listening to the When Life Hands You Lemons podcast.
But in an entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back.
If your goal today is to make a basket, we're going to make that basket.
The minute you create something, as soon as it's made tangible, you have a copyright in it.
How do I get our guys to sound that big, that full when they do the harmonies?
And I'm your host, Lennon Seahawk. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. This week's episode is with Miss Kate Schutt, and she is a musician, songwriter, and singer based in Manhattan, New York, and I will let her tell her story because she has a pretty incredible one. She's also a TEDx speaker, and she gave an incredible speech on TEDx, which I will link in the show notes below. But in this episode, Kate and I talk about everything songwriting. We talk about how, when she was taking care of her sick mother, how she kept her ideas written down and organized, and then when she was able to write music, how she was able to get them out, how she's able to co-write on certain topics that are very personal to her. I've always wondered that myself, like something like Kate's story with her mom being sick and having to take care of her and then ultimately passing in 2015. How do you co-write songs with something like that? So we dig into that. We also talk about how to keep yourself organized and how to stay inspired, because organization is so key, especially when you've got a lot of ideas, because we all have, let's be honest, 10, 15 projects going at this moment that we kind of push to the side, or, we have one or two that we're always kind of bouncing back and forth between. But for me, I have more projects that are unfinished than I have finished projects. And I'm sure a lot of musicians can agree with me and say the same. But we talk about the organization and keeping your things backed up and the kind of the technical aspect of that, because we've all went through the disaster of having something crash like a hard drive and we lose everything. And Kate has a similar story to that as well. But I don't want to go on too much because Kate has the great story, and I'll let her tell that. But before we get into her conversation, I just want to remind you of a couple things. Please send up to my email list, as it helps me notify you when new episodes like this are live. I would also appreciate if you would follow me on Instagram and check out the website, which is lennonseahawk.com, LENNONCIHAK.com. I would also appreciate a 5-star rating and or review on Apple Podcasts. It helps me grow the show and helps it be discovered by new listeners. And lastly, there is a guest request form in the show notes below. So if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, please fill it out and I will reach out. So without further ado, let's dive into my incredible, amazingly inspiring conversation with Miss Kate Schutt. I love your room. What do you got going on in there? You got all kinds of sheet music and pictures.
Yeah, this is my tiny little 10 by 8 practice room in my apartment that I got soundproofed. So it's pretty messy right now, and I haven't done I just got it soundproofed
oh wow,
right before the coronavirus. So okay. I still have all the audio sound, like the hold on, the sound treatment.
Oh sure.
I gotta do all the sound treatment to it. So I've got chunks of this stuff lying around.
What kind is that? Is that like an
This is actually this is a cool company I found online called Audio Mute. So Audimute. It's hard to say. AUDIMUTE, and it's made out of paper.
Oh, interesting.
Which is cool. So it's not like that weird plasticky foam.
Yeah.
It's basically compressed recycled paper.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you are based in New York, right?
I'm based in Manhattan. Yep.
Wow, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about yourself. What's it like working in quarantine? Are you still remaining creative even though it's as stressful as it is?
Yeah. No. This whole time for me has been surprisingly very creative. New York was a grim place in the beginning of all of this. Of course, everybody knows that. And for me, it sort of unleashed a kind of, I don't know. I mean, when you really couldn't go outside, I mean, I was I had it I have my instruments around me. I have a piano down in the regular part of my apartment, and you know, it was like sort of an excuse, or actually the opposite. There was no longer any excuses for doing a bunch of things that I'd always wanted to do. So, for example, just really dove back into the piano really seriously.
And do you is that your main instrument? What instruments do you play?
No, my principal instrument is guitar.
Okay.
And that's the instrument I've been playing since I was 12. But I did start on the piano and
Okay.
took lessons from age 11 to about 15 or so, and then dabbled in it along the way. So it's not like I didn't have any chops, but I certainly, you know, needed to spend some time with it. And so the coronavirus has really given me that opportunity.
Are you classically trained or jazz trained?
Nope. Yeah. So not classically trained. Piano wise, just, you know, sort of. I guess I started with a little classical training, but on guitar, I really just picked up my instrument for fun as a kid, and to play in garage bands. But I was lucky enough to have a teacher, an amazing guy named John Darty, who was a jazz guitar player, and he was my teacher from age 12 on. So kind of early start with that music, and then eventually, through various other times in my life, I ended up at Berklee College of Music and studied jazz guitar there, and was a arranging performance major, basically.
Okay. So what kind of music do you typically play on the piano? Do you play different genres of music on the guitar versus the piano, or?
Yeah, interesting question. No, I use I kind of use them for both similar things. I mean, the guitar obviously I know so much better. So I write most of my music with that instrument. But the piano for me is like, I don't know, you know, I don't have as many hang-ups with it because it's not my principal instrument. So all the things that I'm annoyed at myself for and have a lot of self-hate around with the guitar, you know, I'm just purely loving being a quote beginner on the piano. And for me, the piano is a really great tool to figure out music on. Like, I don't know, for some reason I have a lot easier time sort of transcribing things and playing along with things on the piano.
Yeah, I played piano for the last 15 years of my life. I'm not anywhere near classically trained or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I never, when I was younger, I kind of neglected it and didn't really know that I was going to be in the music business or wanted to be a musician. So I kind of neglected it. I wish I would have done more, but I can get my way around it. I know music theory. I can sight read a little bit and things like that. But one thing I've been wanting to do is learn the guitar. But it's totally foreign to me, and I can play like 4 or 5 chords, like G, C, D, and E minor. So I got a whole key signature there.
Yeah, there you go.
I can
You're
figure
ready.
that out, but
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. But guitar has always been a little bit foreign to me. Another thing that is kind of foreign to me is songwriting. Like I can produce music and write chords and all that stuff, but when it comes to actually writing lyrics, I struggle. And it's funny because I'm a journalist as well. So I write a lot of words, but I can't write them for music.
What goes through your head when you've tried to do it?
I guess it's just a whole overwhelming charade of I don't know what to write about. I don't have enough experiences. What am I going to write about? It's just like, I don't know. I just kind of gravitate towards getting the chords down first, whereas some people write a story and then they get the chords figured out. Whereas I'm kind of function the other way, which is kind of weird. So what is your songwriting process? Like, how do you start it, like from scratch all the way to the end? Like what's...
You know, for me, it's been different at different times in my life. You know, it started with lyrics first. It's started with music first. I mean, now at this point in my career, I'm at a place where whatever I start with first, I try to very immediately marry it to the other thing. So if I have a lyrical idea, then I try to almost immediately put it right to some music, and vice versa. Partly because I found that if I don't do that, I end up in some sticky situations, you know, like,
Sure.
Lyric wise, I might have some kind of strange rhythm or, kind of some weird thing going on in the lyric that doesn't necessarily map so easily over to music. And I've just felt like, and the opposite is true. Like if I start with lyrics, or if I start with music, then it might be. I always feel like I'm shoehorning some lyrics onto that later. Though I know a lot of people write that way. So for me, I sort of I get whatever idea I get, and then I go for it basically with both of them. And I do a lot of my songwriting process is quite slow, I feel. I mean, that's what the the voices inside my head tell me. So I spend a lot of time recording like ideas. Like maybe I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Like maybe especially when I'm starting a song and it's not so clear what it's going to be, what genre it's going to be. Whether a lot of my music is sort of jazz pop, kind of like modern day Cole Porter-ish kind of stuff. But I don't solely write that kind of music. So if I'm not too sure what way a song is going to go groove-wise or feel-wise, I might record 4 different versions of it, like one super up-tempo and kind of rock pop-ish, one sort of jazz-ish, one sort of, something else with maybe just some dummy lyrics or, the one line I've got. And then I'll put it away for the night, for a week. And then I'll come back to it and be like, oh yeah, that one sounds better. Like that one sounds like more, like that one's wearing the right clothes, so to speak, And so then I'll sort of chase that down. I'm pretty disciplined at this point in terms of, I don't know, I go into a writing session kind of knowing like, okay, my goal is I'm going to write one verse here. Like I'm going to get a really terrible first draft of a verse, and then I'll record a quick version of it, put it away. I really try to use like sleep and time and the passage of time as a really good way of seeing what is actually there. You must know that as a writer, right? Like you write something, you may think it's great or not even great. You may just be like, I'm done. And then you come back 2 days later and you're like, whoa, I've got some editing to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I do that with a lot of my music too. Like I'll get down a very rough draft and it's like I come back and I'm like, what on earth was I thinking?
Right.
And then you keep tweaking it. And I've got some songs that I've been meaning to just totally finish. Like they're done, but I keep going back and tweaking them.
Right.
And I go back to the car and I listen to it in the car and I'm like, nah, the bass is still a little bit too quiet. Turn it up, and then it's too loud, and it's like I got to keep tweaking it. And then I'm finding like, oh, the melody or the lead is too loud, and it's like, and the reverb is too much. It's like, I just need to stop messing with it.
Yeah, there's definitely comes a point where like you have to. I think in the entrepreneurial world, it's called shipping it. Like you have to just ship it and move on and write the next thing. But I think up until that point, I think using things like different locations, using time, the passage of time, I'll often, especially if it's sort of like I have a pretty good draft going of the song and I've got a demo of it going, I'll put it on in another room and like sit in a different room and listen to it. Like almost as if I'm overhearing it. Like, I don't know. Oh, hey, what's that music over there I'm listening to? Like as a kind of way to trick myself into like hearing it with somebody else's ears,
Yeah. That's
I like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I guess I've never done that. See, I do a lot of dance music, so it's always like very loud and in your face.
Right.
Put
it on in like a really far room and listen to it. Check it out. It's like a cool.
Yeah.
It's a really cool idea.
That's
like
interesting.
You'll hear stuff also because of course like just the sound quality will be different. So you'll hear like things you can't hear when it's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's super interesting. I'll have to try. I'll have to try that. Oh, my cat's
try it. Oh, hey cat. Hey kitty cat.
He just ate, so he's going a little. He's got the zoomies.
Excited.
Yeah, he's excited.
Nice.
So, are you typically writing the melodies as you're writing the lyrics, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty unless I have a melodic idea going right away. I mean, sometimes the lyrics come to me and there'll be a melody, that sort of suggests itself, and then I'll be working out what chords go underneath of it or what chords could go underneath of it. But it's all happening at this point. I pretty much write it all at the same time. I might, and then of course, like anything else, I might say, okay, I know that this melody needs to be fixed in this part, but I'm working on something else at this point. So like, okay, note to self, I got to go back and fix that at some point, or really pay attention. Like, is it going to be that note? Is it going to, I mean, the other thing that I've really come to learn how to do, and this is not how I started as a songwriter, but is to write the chorus first. And that may be very common in dance music. I'm not sure, but
yeah, it's typically they don't really. Well, sometimes if they have vocals, they call it the chorus, and I guess you could call it that. But a lot of times it's the drop is what they call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I typically write like the most highest energetic point, and then I kind of build around that. 'Cause it's easier to get to the highest point because you go into it super excited, and then you kind of build it up. Because you just kind of take stuff away, and then you add stuff slowly into the biggest part. So where are you drawing inspiration from? I mean, you obviously draw inspiration from life, but what are other things that you draw inspiration from? Maybe pictures or...
Yeah, I mean, my newest project was basically written. My mom got diagnosed with cancer in October of 2011, and I was gigging around New York and actually about to go to a gig over in the Middle East, sort of like a restaurant gig for a month at least, if not more than that. And just obviously I was going home to take care of my mom. So I broke my contract. I moved home, and
Where were you living at that point?
I had moved to New York in 2010. So I had kind of spent a year, getting to know people and getting into the scene and starting to make some contacts and play gigs around the city and stuff like that. And then this happened. And so so all this new music that I have been working on, I'd say for the last couple of years, has been about that journey with my mom. And I didn't always have a lot of time. I mean, I actually didn't play the guitar for like a year and a half. I didn't do anything musical right in the beginning, just because of her care was so overwhelming, and just kind of figuring out what the plan of attack was going to be. But the thing I did was I kept notes about like ideas. Good. Yeah. And so that was a really big project. I mean, I knew I wanted to write about all that. And so eventually my mother died in 2015. And so I had written a bunch of songs in there. I eventually got a chance to go start writing some music while she was still alive. And then when she died, it was sort of like, okay, game on, I've got all this stuff that I want to say to her, to me, to my family, to people that are going through loss and illness, and kind of traversing that line between the land of the well and the land of the sick. And so that was really what I have been working on for a long time now. I mean, and since I finished recording that record, I've been doing a lot of co-writing, and that, that's been really great. That's been a lot, again, about a lot of heart, a lot of stuff going on in the heart.
How do you co-write with somebody on such an emotional topic, something so personal to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has had loss in their life, whether it's something as dramatic as that, or whether it's the loss of a friendship, or the loss of a job, the loss of a dream. And so we can meet there, and talk about that. And I think music is the best place to reach each other and talk about that, because oftentimes loss and illness, or really tough letting go issues around that are really difficult to actually start the conversation. And music can be a way in, like it can be a little key that unlocks a bunch of emotions that, how you just want somebody to hear a song, and if they hear the song, they'll know what you mean. Yeah. So it's almost like that. It's like using um, it's using music to talk about some things that I think are hard to talk about.
It's a form of expression for a lot of people. Like they can't sit down and talk like you and I, but they can sit down and write a song about it and have no problems. And that's the most beautiful thing about music is there's more than one way to just express it other than lyrics. You can do it through the chords, you can do it through the instrumentation, the structure. I
Yeah.
mean, one of my all-time favorite songs that it makes me emotional and it just makes me run all the time is Hans Zimmer's track "Time" in the Interstellar soundtrack.
Yeah.
I think it's Interstellar. But it just starts off and it just builds throughout the whole thing. I mean, he's one of my favorite composers of all time.
Right.
But
And
it's
like
just
no lyrics, right?
no lyrics. It's
Yeah.
just piano, strings, guitars. It's so simple, but it just brings about certain emotions. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Just brings about certain emotions and feelings and thoughts and memories that aren't triggered through other tracks and music that I listen to. And I think that is so powerful for a track to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think anybody, that's why we do it, right? Is to
Yeah.
communicate and to illuminate the human condition. You know, it's not all ones and zeros. It's not all money. You know, there's so many different things that speak to us, and that we need to. I mean, I think we can all take solace. All of us that are artists of any kind or makers of any kind, is that like humans have been making since the beginning of time. You know, like we have been banging on things. We have been singing. You know, birds sing. Like it's just like no matter what is going on, there's. I think it's also, of course, brings you to the present. I think that's so
Yes.
much of what music does.
Yes.
That's so much of what it's about. It's about the being in the present moment. And you know, think about how very little time the collective we, spend in the present.
Yeah,
You know?
everything's always based in the future. I mean, especially now, we've got, political injustices, social injustices, we've got a global pandemic. We're in a whole mixing pot of things that nobody has ever experienced.
Right.
And nobody knows how to channel it and get rid of it safely and effectively. And for me, it's been turning to music. And I'm sure a lot of people do that, but we're in that climate where there's so many things going on. We don't know how to feel and we're just all kind of just there. But we're kind of we're like for music, we're looking, I miss being able to go to shows. I miss
Yeah.
going to those shows. I wish I could still perform. That one gig that I performed at 6 months ago, it was so great and I love reliving it. And then, you look forward to, you're like, I can't wait till I can, perform. My first gig is going to be with this and I've got it all lined up. And I can't wait to go to this festival with these friends. We're not living in the present. We're not living in
Exactly.
right now. We're thinking before and after. We're not thinking right now. And that's important, I think, like you
Yeah.
had mentioned.
Yeah.
So going through your songwriting process and your with your mom passing away, you took care of all of those notes. You took up all of those notes. And now you're kind of going through them all and you're pulling them out and you're writing the songs about them, right?
Yeah.
So how was your songwriting process, or even just lyrically different now than it was before? I mean, not just because you have a bigger story to write about, but maybe because certain things have totally changed your outlook and view on the process.
Well, I mean, I think it really came down to, I knew there were a number of things I wanted to say to my mom. And so that's different than that's like writing a song to a person, that's almost like a letter. And that's different than the sort of, I don't even know, like, I mean, I'm a songwriter who I write very realistic songs. I mean, I'm not my songs are always they're just very realistic and very based in my life and based in life. But it's different when you're writing about, I don't know, a love relationship versus like, I need to tell you that your life mattered, you know? So I think that was what was different, is that I had like I had maybe 3 or 4 things that I really needed to tell her before she died. And those were the songs that I wrote right away. And those were the songs that she heard. And then the other songs for this project were really about kind of trying to figure out, like, I don't want this person to die. Like, what is death? I mean, death's going to happen to us all, but what's going on here? And I'm not ready for this to happen. So there's a number of songs on the record that are like that. And then there's some songs that are just more like, I wanted to try to put myself in her shoes. And they were really written from what must it have been like to be her. And of course, I couldn't write those songs until she was gone. Actually, it's funny, I tried to write those songs while she was alive, and I could never do it, and I was sort of frustrated. And then a friend of mine, a very wise friend, was like, well, of course you can't do that, because you can't wear her shoes yet. She's still in her shoes.
That's a good analogy.
I was like, you're right. That's why I can't do it. So I had to sort of file those ideas away and wait until after she passed away, and enough time had passed away where I could really try to put myself in her shoes. So it was like I had a story to tell, and I had, and meanwhile, I'm a big reader, and I was reading a lot of, I ended up calling it sort of like the literature of death. But I mean, I think all literature is probably ultimately about death. It just as all literature is almost always about a journey. But like, I started reading Christopher Hitchens' Mortality, which is you probably know, if you're a journalist, you know who Christopher Hitchens is, a fantastic, amazing journalist who died of throat cancer. And when he got diagnosed, he wrote a book. He started writing about it. And so there's this very slim volume called Mortality, that's it's just unbelievable, because he's an incredible writer, and he's so cogent, and he's so aware of what's happening to him. And so, I read that. I read Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I read a lot of books about death, either nonfiction, also fiction, sort of where death is the big topic. And that really informed a lot of my songwriting too. And so that's different. I'd never really I have a couple of pretty literary songs that are based on. I have a song that I co-wrote about the Diary of Anne Frank, and some other things that are about specific books. But I had never really been like, oh, I'm going to read this body of work and use it to inform my songwriting. So
that's super interesting. And I love the analogy of you can't write the music yet because she's still in her shoes.
Yeah.
So how do you do with, like, obviously you were frustrated in that moment and trying to get that out because it's such an important message, and you're like, I have to make sure that she hears this. I have to make sure that I tell this story. So, and you talked to your friend and they helped you through it, but how did you get through the frustration, or do you often get frustrated when you're writing music? And how do you get around it? Because oftentimes when I get frustrated with something, whether it be technical, whether I can't get an idea out, whatever it is, I shut down and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all have some, some version of that at some point. I mean, for me, again, it all comes down to time passing. And that if I can let enough time pass, if I'm lucky enough to not have a deadline, which for this project I didn't, I could just let time pass. And eventually I'll find an answer. an answer will appear. To me, an answer will appear in conversation. I mean, for me, it's really helpful to have someone who kind of knows what you're aiming for, like knows you and your music really well. And for me, that's my partner. And I could really I could write, say, a set of lyrics for something, and she could really dive into it with me and be like, yeah, that's good, but it's not like, I think I don't know if you really I don't know if you really nailed it there, and so I think it's helpful. So the passing of time is my first answer to your question. I think just if you're lucky enough to not have a deadline, let more time pass. And then for me, that always works. And then the other one is to have somebody you really trust, who puts your creative desires first and can really be a really honest sounding board for you.
That's really good advice. I like the time passing. So when time is passing,
Yeah.
what are you doing in those moments? Are you writing another song? Are you going for
Yeah. I
like-
could be writing another song. I mean, I could be working on my guitar playing. I could be writing some instrumental music. I could be doing a lot of things. What I don't do is try to think about that thing that I'm working on. I try to let it really go, because that's the only way I'll end up hearing it, like an audience, like a person who doesn't know me will hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the thing that's the thing I'm always trying to go for, is like, what's a stranger gonna hear?
That's good. Do you have, like, if you're obviously doing that and let's say you get into a routine of, you get frustrated and you say, oh, I'm going to put this aside. And then you start another project and you say, oh, I'm going to put that one aside. And then you've got 10 different projects that you haven't finished. How do you ever finish a project? Like, how do you stay out of that cycle?
That is a great question. I mean, there's a real skill to being able to finish.
Yes.
That is a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know how I got out of that cycle is I do a lot of visual art, and I have done a lot of visual art in my life. And I once had a painting teacher say to me, Kate, that there are things that you can only learn by finishing. So if you never finish, you will never learn those things, because they only happen through finishing. Either they only happen at that last, that last quarter, let's say, or last 10%, or they happen after you finish and you see something that you couldn't see when something was unfinished. And that analogy really hit me, and I think it applies to all things. There's really things there for you to learn that you cannot learn if you do not finish. And I think the analogy, so I was able to transfer that over into music and really see, into songs, and see, like, okay, there are definitely songs that I have finished that I know that aren't my greatest songs, but I know that I did learn something from finishing them, and can point to the lessons that I learned from that. So that I think is really, I mean, it is hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Finishing is hard.
Yeah. I've got about 50 unfinished projects and about 3 finished projects.
Yeah. So there are things waiting. There's things there for you, Lennon.
Yes, I know.
Like those are lessons you need to learn there.
Yes, and I will.
Yeah,
I've always got like a running list of 10 projects that are like priority. Mm-hmm. And then when I don't have any inspiration, I can go back to an old project and be like, I really like this, even if it's just a 4-bar loop that I created. I'm like, oh, I really like this. And then you run with it. And then it moves up to in my priority list to finish.
I once heard I once was able to see the cartoonist Linda Berry, who's amazing and has a great Tumblr page if anybody's interested, and has written a number of great books all about cartooning, but really about life. And I once heard her speak, and she said exactly that. She's like, I always have like about 3 projects going simultaneously, so that when I get to a stuck place on one, I can just pick up the other. And so I'm sort of never in a fallow period, basically. And that's really helpful. And I have something similar to that. I have this huge, my songwriting system is like do I have any of it? And it's all downstairs, but like my song ideas live on pieces of paper inside a big like manila envelope. And so if I'm sort of looking and I'm wondering what's next, or I'm frustrated with something, I can always just go there and spend some time with those ideas. So I just am constantly putting ideas into this envelope. Things I overhear.
So you've got, let's say, 20 different projects going in that manila envelope, or
Yeah,
bunch
easily.
of different songs. So let's say you pick up one of those, you go through and you find one of those projects, and at the time it was a really kind of emotional time, and you got stuck on it, so you moved on.
Right.
So now you're coming back, say 6 months later, a year later, and you're like, oh, I really like this idea where it was going. How do you get back? How do you transition yourself to relive that moment, to kind of come back and experience those emotions again, to kind of finish it out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for me, it's always 2 things. One is I do a lot of free writing. So just to get myself back into that headspace and into that place. And for anybody who doesn't know, that's kind of just like stream of consciousness writing. So I, no periods, no capitalization, no criticizing. Just don't let the pencil or the pen stop. And I'll put on a kitchen timer or something like that and do that for 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes. And through that, I find that I bring up what was going on then. I also do that in the beginning when I put the idea in that folder. I might do a bunch of free writing, even if it's just a minute or so, just so I can remember like what's going on here. What is this about? Because sometimes I put stuff in there and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So that's helpful. And then the other thing is, there's a great book called by the dancer Twyla Tharp, and I think it's called, I can't really quite remember the name right now, but I think it's called like the Creativity Habit or something like that. But she had this great idea when she was creating dances, she would basically make a box, and into that box would go like all of her inspirations and all of her thoughts about this dance that she was going to choreograph. And that would be everything from a piece of writing to like a stuffed animal to a newspaper article to, I don't know, a piece of a rock, like whatever she needed and was part of that dance she was going to create was all in there. And so that's kind of how I do it sometimes too, which is like, if there's anything extraneous, like if there's a photo, or if there's another piece of writing that might pertain to this, or if there's a letter. I write a lot of letters and get a lot of inspiration from letters, and maybe I'll put that in there so that it becomes kind of like. And then once a song goes from like an idea, I give it its own manila folder, and so then in that folder I can put things like, oh, maybe I saw this image. And there's something about that image that goes in there. That's my own system that I developed kind of from reading all these people. And I spent so many years trying other systems that didn't work for me. So I think a lot of it is about, you must have your own system for keeping track of those ideas over long periods of time. That's a big challenge. How do you do that?
I guess I don't write any lyrics actually.
Right, I know, but it's still like a music project. You gotta make sure you don't lose those files.
Everything is in the computer, and I got to make sure that because I'm using samples and everything with my project, so I got to make sure that those samples remain, so that when I open the project in a year, that it can find those samples on the computer, and then when it's not, I got to figure out what hard drive it's on.
Correct.
But I usually use a system called Splice, and most people have heard of that. And it just like automatically backs up your project, samples everything.
Wow.
And when you save it, it'll recognize a new version of it, and it'll just upload it. And it's free. You can have it's got unlimited storage. It just like and it's compatible with like Logic, FL Studio, Ableton, most major digital audio workstations, Pro Tools. It's compatible with, and it'll recognize. So then you can. It's a free application. There's obviously, I think you can pay for it too, like $10 a month.
Premium version.
$10 a month, and then you get access to like their sample libraries and VST instruments and things like that.
Right.
But that's typically what I've used because I've had projects in the past where it's like it's on my PC. Well, I don't ever open my PC, and I just want to work on the project on my Mac. So, and it's like, oh, it's on my other computer. My partner has my other computer, and he's taking it with him. So it's like, now how do I access this project?
Exactly.
But
I mean, this is the same for a songwriter. I mean, it is for me. So.
Yeah, you just got to find a system that works. For you, it's the manila envelopes, and maybe you have a different system if you're working in a computer or recording something.
Right.
And for me, it's Splice, and just like keeping track there and just kind of trying to organize my Splice and everything.
But isn't it so great once you find that system?
Yes.
Because for me, it took me so long to get to that point, and I beat myself up. Like, you know, writing in a notebook. Well, that never works because, like, I had that great idea 3 years ago. Where the hell's that notebook? Like, you know, and so there's so many systems that I like abandoned, that I read about and tried and then abandoned. And every time I abandoned one, I was like, oh man, it was just like another like punch in my gut. And then I finally figured out what worked for me. Also, like I said, I write songs over really long periods of time. Like I have a song I wrote that took me probably minimum 3 years to write. And so I had to keep track of, like, that was for me, was really, I had to figure out a way, like, how am I not going to lose the thread, you know? And that, like, I guess what I'm here to say is, like, if you don't have a system yet,
figure it out.
Don't beat yourself up. You, like, welcome to the club. Join us. And it's not you. You're not a bad person. You're not good, you know. It's just you need to keep looking and keep experimenting because you'll find it. You know, you'll find that system, and then when you do, it just makes your life so much easier. Like now, I never have to worry.
Right.
I just know.
And that's literally a musician or artist's worst nightmare, is losing a piece of art.
And I did, by the way. That's so funny that you say that, because for this record, I wrote a song, and I literally, I must have written it quite quickly for me, and I didn't write the lyrics. I mean, maybe I wrote the lyrics down. I don't really know. All I knew, I had a scrap of the lyrics. But the melody was really strong, and I could remember the melody. But man, I looked everywhere. And I was like, well, oh well.
Yeah. What do? You get frustrated, and then you get creatively blocked, and you can't move forward.
Yeah.
But there's been so many times where I had a project, and maybe the project got corrupted, like it just wouldn't open, and that happens all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Or I moved it somewhere, or I created a duplicate, and I can't remember what I did with the original, and I'm like, damn, I really like the way this was going. But on a positive note, oftentimes the idea that I come up after that, like the second or third one, is usually much better than the first.
Snaps to you.
Always.
Yeah, this is what we have to say is, like, join the club, people. Like, if it happens to you, don't beat yourself up.
Start over. You might actually like what you come up with the second time or third time much more than you like the original.
Yeah.
And going back, my senior year of high school, which is 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
We had a foreign exchange student, and she became like my best friend. She was from Sweden, and we literally did everything together. We took so many pictures, and then that year we also went on a field trip There's like 130 kids from 9th grade to 12th grade, and then parents, and we all went to New York, funny enough.
Oh, yeah.
And we went to Times Square and all this stuff, and I was
Yeah.
kind of like the photographer. I even won Student of the Month because of it, because I was taking pictures and I was posting them on my Facebook page, so
Yeah.
all the kids' parents that weren't able to go, they could kind of keep up with them and, see that their kids were safe and having fun.
Yeah.
But my hard drive crashed and I lost my entire senior year. I mean, I had videos.
Man.
We had YouTube videos that we had made just for fun that we never
Yeah.
released, pictures from the senior trip, basketball games, volleyball games, everything. There was a few pictures that I threw up on like Facebook and stuff.
Yeah.
But my cats, they were playing and I had cords and stuff on my computer and they ran through it, ripped my hard drive off my desk, and it crashed.
was it.
I even sent it into like data recovery company out in Michigan or something, and they're like, the platters are scratched. There's nothing we can do. I'm like, no. I mean,
It
I
happens.
was gonna shell out like $800 or whatever it was gonna cost me, because I'm like, that was my entire senior year.
Yeah. It happens, man. It happens. It's
So,
like,
I have learned a very tough lesson that backing up your files is so important, and making sure that you've got a system, like you had said, whether that's envelopes, or something. Just keep backups.
yeah. It's humbling when that happens.
Yes, it is. So going back just a little bit, you talked
Sure.
about getting feedback, and your partner gives you good feedback and is kind of able to give you a bird's eye view. When you're going to feedback, is she kind of like the only one that you typically go to, or do you go to other people, or how do you
Yeah.
find somebody if somebody doesn't have somebody to go to? What do you look for in somebody to give feedback? Obviously, you don't want to go to your mom or your dad.
Yeah. I think if you don't have someone, I think probably the best, if you don't have someone, a good way to do it is to again use time, like record a demo, record what do I want to say? Maybe not a demo, but like record you playing the song all the way through. So for you, that might be like get to a finished state, with your track. For me, it would be, the full song as best as I can play it. Just on an iPhone, whatever, but something where it's complete. And then put it away. And put it away for a while if you can. Then listen back to it. You'll hear, you'll hear what needs to be fixed. The other way I would say to do it would be to play it for someone, and go into it and say, I just need to play this for you, because the process of playing it live in front of another breathing human, even if you ask them not to say anything, which I've done, I have said to somebody, people, I need to play this live for you. I actually don't want your opinion, but the process of me playing it live will show to me what's wrong with it, where the weak spots are. And that's a really good thing. Now, you don't have to be that like specific. You don't have to say, I don't actually want to hear what you have to say. You could say, hey, I wanna play this live for you. It's a new song. I'm not too sure about the fill in the blank. The bridge. Can you listen specifically for that? And so when I'm done, give me some feedback on that. So I find, that's fair game. Asking for specific things. So yeah, I think having another human being, and if you can't, it's coronavirus, so that's not possible, but doing it through Zoom even. There's something about the live performance aspect of it, or like the first couple times you share it with somebody else, that I think illuminate a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know, what do you think?
I like that. I think, and we all probably, most often than not, you'll probably have a social media account, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, post on there. Hey,
whoa, you're braver than I am.
Hey,
no way.
I wouldn't send
never
it to
do that.
6 people. I would just say, and then maybe if you get 6 replies, maybe you vet somebody, maybe you find something like, oh, I used to go to high school with this person. I'm going to send it to that person. Or I used to work with this person. Or this is my friend's cousin's dad. You know, I know this
Right.
person rather than some random, like, obviously if you have a fan, they're obviously not going to be subjective about it or
Right.
objective about it. But yeah, because, hey, I got a track, would love to send it over to somebody, hit me up, you know? So that's a good idea. Obviously you're brave if you do that. But
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's playing it live in front of someone really helps. I mean, I know with this record, I had a couple of mentors. I mean, a lot of it too comes to like, do you have songwriting friends where this is kind of what you do for each other, where you kind of make a pact, like, okay, we're not going to bullshit each other, you know? And that's kind of nice. And having that accountability is really great. And I have over the years developed a couple of mentors where I feel like I can share what I'm working on. Now, I'm not going to send them the first draft. They're too busy for that, you know, but I might send them the sixth draft.
sure.
And I might have a specific ask, you know? So I think feedback is so huge, right? I mean, it's like iterate, record, feedback, iterate, record, feedback, and then just kind of do that loop.
Yeah, that's interesting. And plus, you know, with songwriters, you kind of all can use the same terminology. So like if you ask a friend who is maybe not a musician, you say, hey, can you listen to the bridge? Well, what's that?
Yeah, right.
You know, or hey,
Yeah.
can you listen to
That's right.
the snare drum in this? Well,
Yeah.
what's the snare drum? Is that the big one or is that
Yeah,
you know?
that's interesting. That's a really great point. Is that sometimes you want that, right? Because
Yeah.
you want to be like, what's the chorus feel like, or you know, what's your favorite part?
Yeah.
And they're going to tell you something that you might like have not even heard, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But there's also, you're right. Like there's certain people you can't be like, tell me what the bridge is like. Because
Yeah.
they'll be like, what part's that?
Yeah. I mean, I overanalyze music. Like I went to school for music production, so I can get in and like I can kind of dissect a mix. I'm like, oh, those vocals are too quiet, they're too loud, the bass is overpowering, whatever it may be. And sometimes I'll ask somebody who is not music, like my partner, he's not musically inclined at all, and he'll be like, you should try this. And it's maybe a basic thing, but it's like, oh, I'll try it.
Right.
That's
Totally.
like, oh, I never thought of it. So I usually ask people who are not musically inclined more of like a general overview of like, what do you think of this? Not something like, what do you think of the bass line in this specific part? Like, should I go to the fifth or should I make it, you know,
Right.
a minor sixth or, you know, that type of thing.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
So, but yeah, that's a good point, you know, kind of create a pact.
Yeah.
Do you produce your own music or do you hire that out?
I have in the past
Okay.
produced most of my earlier records. I mean, there's a couple in there that I co-produced. For this record, I knew very clearly that I did not want to produce it myself. I really wanted to focus on. I love producing. I just love it. It's something I really, really feel really comfortable doing, and felt comfortable doing for all my other records, but for this one I just knew nope, I didn't want to do it. And I always approach a record, if I'm going to take the time to make a record, I always think about it sort of as like it's kind of like getting a college degree. Like, cuz if you're going to take, 12 songs and you're going to put them all together and spend all that time, because let's face it, unless you're making a live record, and even then you've spent all the time rehearsing for it.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, if you're making this project, it's going to be a really long time. I look at it kind of like, okay, I'm going to spend all this time. What do I want on the other side of it? What skill do I want to have that I don't have now by the time I get to the other side of it? And so that's kind of how I've approached the last bunch of records I've made, and whether I was producing it or not. So even the ones that I was producing, it was like, okay, I want to get really good at, I want to really understand like the whole vocal chain thing. I want to get like, so at the end of this project, after recording these 12 songs, I really want to feel like I understand and feel like I owned that whole process. Like I actually did everything I could do to make that sound great. Like, so I knew with this record, not only did I not want to produce it because it was so personal to me that I wanted to really keep all of my attention focused on that. I also was ready for somebody who was just a badass to teach me.
Yeah.
And to spend time in their presence. And luckily I was able to convince a fantastic, amazing musician named Rob Mounsey, who's just an incredible pianist and an incredible producer and has been on some of my favorite albums, produced some of my favorite albums, to say yes. And so I got to spend, a year and a half with him.
Wow.
And I treasure it amazingly. And it was a college education, like everything. I keep threatening him that I'm going to do some like giant blog post, like everything I learned from Rob Mounsey. And maybe one day I will.
I think you should. I think getting those ideas, and it'll just be kind of a staple, and you'll be able to refer back to it. I think you're right. It's word to word, yeah. And who knows? Like, I've put out blog posts that I like to journal to and write and just throw stuff up, and I've written stuff, and I'm like, I don't like this, like, but this is how I'm feeling right now in this moment, or this is an experience that I have an opinion about, and I want to share it. And I've done that, and I've shared it, and they do really well. I get a lot of feedback on it. And somebody's like, oh, I never thought of that. That's really interesting. So people do learn, even if you think it's worthless to you, or you don't find it interesting, somebody else does. Like for me, I've put out podcasts, ones of my own, and just like, I really enjoy this conversation, but I just feel like I should have asked different questions, or I should have approached it differently. And some of those I actually get feedback the most on. They're like, that's like one of my favorite. They're like, that's one of my favorite episodes, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. So you did actually like. It's just kind of like approves it, which is a really good feeling. So even if you don't enjoy it or you don't think it's going anywhere, I suggest putting it out, and I would love to check it out, because working songwriter and producer, that's an interesting relationship, and how those kind of come together, and what you learned is always.
Yeah, and he's a genius, and I don't know if there's any other. I know he pointed me to one right when we started working together, a podcast he did way long ago that he appeared on, and that was super valuable. But I just feel like I have so many things that I learned from him that it would also help me. It would solidify those lessons for me, of course.
Yeah.
So
you don't have to do it for other people. You can just do it for yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Do it for yourself. Yeah. You have produced your own music. Do you do you do anything other than just songwriting and producing? Like, do you write? You said you do instrumental music. Do you do anything with that instrumental music? Like, do you get into sync licensing or anything like that?
Nope, I have never been into sync licensing. It's a world I'd love to get into, but it just hasn't. It hasn't fallen into my lap, and I haven't gone out there and pursued it. I've just been totally working on songwriting and trying to play my guitar better. I mean, I love, and I guess I play live a lot, so I'm constantly doing that and constantly working on that. Getting gigs. I'm self-booked, so That's,
oh wow.
So that's a full-time job.
That's a full-time job.
Or it was. I don't know if it ever will be again.
True. At least not for a while.
Yeah. So.
Interesting. That's so. Do you have a manager or anything like that, or just all on your own?
No manager. Been all doing it myself. I mean, at this point, I have an assistant named Carol, who's awesome.
She helped us get this book.
Helped
us get this book.
And a kind of small but fierce team that helps me do things. But in terms of sort of managing and booking and that kind of stuff, I haven't been blessed yet.
You'll get there. There. If you've got everything under control there, you just got to find the right person. Like, you just don't want to hire anybody just because, you got to find the right team.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's great. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you. And I know
Awesome.
you're in New York. It's getting a little late for you.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep you up too much.
Yeah,
I'm sure
awesome.
you're incredibly busy, and I
Yeah.
got a couple of things to get taken care of tonight as well. So how can the listeners keep in touch with you and follow up with you if they have any questions, anything you mentioned, all that fun stuff?
Sure. Well, a couple things. One thing to let everybody know is I actually, over the last couple of years, have been writing a book about songwriting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was kind of a side project. That people should keep their eyes peeled for that. It's not out yet, but it's in the works. I have an agent, and we're just starting that whole process. I'm very excited about that. So a lot of
Congrats.
thank you. A lot of the lessons that I talked about tonight are referenced in there, and a lot of other stuff too.
Amazing.
Yeah, so there's that. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. And yeah, I mean, I'm on the socials, pretty easy to find. And hit me up. I
Great.
love talking about this kind of stuff with people, and I love,
Yeah.
I specifically love talking about kind of the inner game. When I mentioned, like beating myself up and what do the voices say to you about that? Like a lot of my musical journey has been about learning how to deal with the voices, the critical voices inside my own head.
The saboteur. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I coach people around that kind of stuff now, and basically I just love talking about that because for me it's been a big journey of learning how to deal with that, learning how to deal with those voices and not letting them run the show.
Yeah, I've had that the last month or two, and just like I'm trying to get into sync licensing, and that's something that's always piqued my interest. And I just keep a friend of mine is doing very well in it, and I always compare myself to other people in the game, and then I'm like, oh, I'll never be that person. I'll never make that much money,
Right.
or I'll never be that successful, and it's just like it shuts me down, and then I'm like, no, Lennon, bad.
Right.
No, you know better. You know
Yeah.
better. And then I open up my project and I get going. But it's real. It's real. And
It's real.
it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love talking to people about that. And
Yes.
it's, in all of those, whether it's in songwriting, whether it's in their relationship to their instrument, whether it's like, I could never write a song, I don't know. I don't know the first thing about music. Whether it's, wow, I should practice more, but I'm not, you name it, I have battled that demon, basically.
Yeah.
And so I love talking to people. And on Instagram, I've been posting, and on YouTube posting a lot. I've started to share a lot of that coaching, self-coaching
Great.
stuff. So that's a good place to follow me. And I people hit me up in there, and we talk about that kind of stuff a
Great.
lot.
Yeah. I'll link all of your information in the show notes so people can
Awesome.
easily find you and reach out.
Great.
But yeah, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you too, Lennon.
it
Thanks for
was-
having me. It was
of
great
course.
to see your face. Great to hear your voice. I've been
Ditto.
listening back to some of the earlier episodes, and it's great work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, this was such
Awesome.
a great conversation. And it should be out actually next Tuesday. So
Woo!
I'll keep you posted and
Here we
send it
go.
over. Here we go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Awesome.
this was great. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Kate.
Yeah. Be well.